Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the DRCB invited seminar today. And we are delighted to have Dr. Lisa Friis to give this seminar. And Dr. Friis is endowed chair and the department chair of the Mechanic Engineering Department at the University of Kansas, that is in Lawrence. And Dr. Friis is, in addition to a mechanic engineer, she's also a biomedical engineer with expertise in musculoskeletal muscle mechanics and materials. She has done outstanding research on novel structural biomaterials, implant design and mechanical testing, and spine biomechanics. Several technologies have been translated from her lab research and licensed by companies. And she is also a co-founder of several startup companies. We were thrilled that she competed for and now is the PI of one of our IRED award that is in the Central Idea region. And she will introduce the IRED award she's leading, as well as sharing her own journey in developing and licensing technology and building companies. Without further ado, Dr. Friis.
Thank you very much, Ming.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. So the seminar will be recorded, and after the seminar, with proper review and approval, the recording along with Dr. Friis's slides will be posted on our website for everybody's benefit. And also, please hold all questions to the end of the seminar and put your question in the chat box. And I will read out the question to all audience, and Dr. Friis will answer them. Now, Dr. Friis, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm just delighted to be here and so excited to tell you about what we're doing with Startup Central. Okay, so Ming asked me to do a little introduction about myself and my journey through academic entrepreneurship. So I am now, as he said, a professor and chair of my own department here in the middle of July 2020, which is an interesting time to start for that position in particular. I rose through the ranks at KU starting in 2001. Before then, I was in a private research lab in a medical center down in Wichita, Kansas. You'll note from my education, my undergraduate is in biomedical engineering and master's and PhD in mechanical engineering. One thing, if you put the timeline together, I went from my master's degree directly to a full-time professional job in the research laboratory in the med center. And then I worked full-time and went to school part-time at night for my PhD. I would not recommend that at all, but it really informed my way of thinking about my work and such. My goal, why I went into biomedical engineering, has always been to help patients. And I think that's the common goal of why people go into this field. I didn't know it at the time, but when I finished my master's degree, I did go to work at this private research institution. I had job offers at other companies. Didn't know it at the time, but I really wanted to have my ideas go forward and be more connected with the medical clinical community. And that was a great way to get connected and learn about the community and have their ideas and my ideas mesh together and go forward. I learned so much in that experience, not just with my PhD, but in working with orthopedic surgery residents and attendings. In 2001, I moved to KU with really the goal of taking what I'd learned there and incorporating it in an engineering department to be more with people, with engineers and students. It was a very different background that I had coming into engineering, but it's the goal again was to spread this through students to make not just what I had in my undergraduate degree, which was fabulous in many ways and really helped inform my way of thinking, but to take them more to the clinical side. Because medical innovation and entrepreneurship has always been my focus, even though I didn't know it at the time. That I grew up on a farm in Iowa, the ultimate entrepreneur, and this way of thinking about translation and growing and contributing to the world really has informed my pathway going forward. So here's a few things that I've done over the years related to entrepreneurship. Back when I was at my first job after graduate school, I did a lot of workshops and training on quality systems and led that. I was lucky enough to be an ad hoc reviewer for NIAMS, mostly NIAMS, mostly for the SBIR program from 2001. Learn a tremendous amount from reviewing, and I just love looking at SBIR review panels and how we think in the same way but differently on scientific merit. I had an opportunity to be a Kauffman Entrepreneurial Faculty Scholar. The Kauffman Foundation is about an hour away from where I live, and it's one of the biggest entrepreneurial education foundations in the world. I was lucky enough to participate in what's called Pipeline. It is a regional program to train entrepreneurs at whatever stage you are to take you to the next level. And I was the only faculty on the team and in the first class, but really connecting in with that world more outside through academia. From there, we designed the biomedical product design and development track in the bioengineering program here at KU, really bringing a way to bring that idea of innovation and entrepreneurship into the graduate program more. I did lead a fellowship program for the Institute of Advancing Medical Innovation at the Med Center here. And in 2012, I was a PI on an I-Corps team on a technology we have since commercialized. Participation in I-Corps, even after all of this, just really flipped the way that I thought about the business side of translation and was really transformative in my journey going forward. I have been involved in SBIR grants, 6 different ones. I've written them, although I'm not the PI, of working with companies on various stages. I founded 4 companies, licensed out various technology, one of which is now in the stages of commercialization. We wouldn't have been able to get through that without SBIR and STTR grants going forward. I am a current CTO and partner in that company, and we're seeking venture capital. It's a really difficult time for venture support right now. But again, I'm learning every step of the way that we do this, and really practicing what I'm preaching is incredibly important to me in going forward. And now just really lucky to be part of the Startup Central IRED program going forward to continue what has been my professional life journey to take entrepreneurial education in our region forward more. But the red part is the biggest lesson that I learned. For the first about 9 years of when I worked down at the private research laboratory, I was working on my ideas and other people's ideas, but no one really talked about FDA. No one talked about commercialization strategies. It was almost like magically companies were going to pick up ideas and they would go forward, and most of them didn't. So learning the hard way, having those failures inform what I needed to do to really, that's why I moved to KU, is to take these learned lessons forward and help others save their time, because as we all know, time is the only thing that we really have, the most valuable. So the major lessons that I learned along the way is failure is compost for success. That just because you fail doesn't mean, if you learn from it, that it doesn't mean you're always a failure, that you will be successful or fail again and learn from it and eventually go forward and be successful. I learned that translation of research is all about listening to customers, whether the customer is FDA, whether it's the hospitals, the medical providers or patients, or any other sector. Listening intently to them and learning from them and pivoting when needed. Like anything, it's about working both hard and smart to overcome those barriers that are present. And that in an academic setting, it requires a lot of balance. I came in to academia really being focused on the translation. One of my early students helped me quite a bit with the phrase papers or products too. So the idea of publishing became real to me as a way, with that mindset became more real to me, and it motivated me more of publishing everything we do and not losing that knowledge going forward as a product for others to learn. I also learned that translational research isn't for everybody, that you really have to do what makes you happy and fulfilled. And just as it isn't for everybody, it can be for you. That I actually, early in my career here at KU, I had my mentor tell me to forget that entrepreneurship stuff because he was worried about my pathway and publication and tenure, which we should all be concerned about. But had I done that, I wouldn't be fulfilled. So I'm glad I didn't listen to him going forward. But then translation, more than I think any other sector, really requires diverse thinking and a diverse team to go forward. And learning to listen to each other with respect is a key as we go forward. Now, these major lessons that I learned and so many other people have learned absolutely have informed what we're doing in Startup Central. So I'm not the only one, and my experiences aren't the only thing that informs Startup Central, but it is a part of what we're doing and why we're doing in Startup Central. So thank you to NIH, NIGMS for funding this. And Krishan and Olga, appreciate very much your guidance and support. I'd like to introduce the key people on our team. Adam Courtney is our co-PI for it. He is the president of the company Continuum Educational Technologies. He's also executive vice president of finance for the KU Innovation Park. So he also has worked for many, many years to help academics translate their technology. Tricia Berkman was part of a previous group. She is the assistant director and our vice chancellor for economic development here at KU, also very much on economic development and going forward. You may all be aware of the previous NIGMS program with the accelerator hubs. There was one in the central region called Sharp Hub, and it had these goals listed for their mission through Sharp Hub. We are not Sharp Hub. So what I'm talking about is the IRED program, the Regional Entrepreneurship Development Program, that is in many ways similar to Sharp Hub in its ultimate goals. But I think it was just so smart. What NIGMS did with this is to enhance sustainability of the program. From my understanding, the focus is to support the small business concerns in the region to develop educational products. Now, by developing educational products, the reason it was so smart is then it becomes sustainable because a company is focused on the product and commercializing that product that will then enhance entrepreneurship in the region. So while Startup Central isn't Sharp Hub, it's a different company, a different team, a different approach, it absolutely has the same goals going forward. So Startup Central is an acronym. You can read here, smart tools to accelerate research translation by uplifting participants, where uplifting is a key word there. And it's for the central region initially, although it could be extended to any region as we're designing the product going forward. The long-term goals are the same as Sharp Hub, but our short-term goal is to design, evaluate, and validate through research a learning management system that will be for entrepreneurial education. And this is an online learning management system based on our recognition of what's really important for our customers. We started with what Sharp Hub identified as barriers to faculty entrepreneurship in our region. And I'm willing to bet that these are similar barriers that exist in all Idea State regions. We put these into 3 buckets. The first 3 bullets are all about what we need to inspire people, despite these barriers, to take that risk and go forward. In our region, we don't have every other person down the hall engaging in entrepreneurship. So building a community of support is really important going forward. There aren't as many resources for innovation and education on this. And those resources that do exist aren't always on our time that we have available. What I do, typically what I've done for entrepreneurship education is on my own time, on the evenings and weekends. It's hard to find time with the teaching and research schedule to fit it in during the day. So being available to train for our community is important. And then support. There's a perception that university support for entrepreneurship and translation is low. Some of this comes from the way your peers view you, because there isn't that inspiration all around you, and because it's high risk, but also it just takes a little bit of money sometimes to go forward. So we are looking at inspiration, training, and support as our guiding principles going forward. The design of our product is based on using existing educational products, some of which are in our region, many of which are outside of our region and available online. But we're putting those together, founded on I-Core principles that are both NSF and NIH, looking at how are SBIRs, how do you design and write SBIRs, and then how incredibly important in medical product development is the regulatory and reimbursement strategy going forward, and including that from the very beginning. We're using Startup School as a regional event, and then business guidance, people that are involved in that as well, to give input and guidance. But a differentiating point are these inspirational case studies that often when you go and look at resources that are available, there are people from the coasts who are doing this. I have nothing against Boston or San Francisco, but when you're in the middle of the country, to see only people from the coasts as examples being brought forward can be not as inspirational as it could be. So we're including videos of people from our region, and would love to include people from the other Idea State regions as inspiration for those of us in these areas going forward. We're putting that together in a smart educational product that's interactive and incorporates adult educational psychology principles for online education. This means you don't go but a few minutes before you have some interface with the technology that keeps you active. You see visual cues going forward. And then we're including assessment of the product as we go along. So real research about, are we actually influencing the entrepreneurial intent of our participants as we go forward? We're working with people in educational psychology who are experts in this, who will help us really determine what influence are we making, and then we're publishing on, hopefully we'll be able to publish on positive results of that as we go forward to better validate the project. Validation will come through the pilot study program, where we'll take participants, we'll match them with teams, provide some funding, build a cohort or community across our region, and we'll provide one-on-one guidance to them, as well as how do you actually form a company going forward. We are just finishing up the phase 1 product design portion of this, where the content has been developed and is being converted to storyboards for this next phase of an educational product that can be then used in translating to an online system through coders that are very expensive. In the product design, we've practicing what we're preaching in using customer discovery to build on what our hypotheses were for what was needed, and then pivot as needed based on our customer discovery results. So we've talked to many students, we've talked to faculty, and we've talked to entrepreneurs and early startup companies, among other people, to really get this insight into what they want and what they need going forward. We've taken into account, like I said, educational psychology principles in this design, and included what I think is an incredibly important aspect in terms of generational differences. All of our traditional undergraduate and graduate students are now Gen Zs, and they think very differently from some of the older generations. But many of the faculty are millennials, Gen X, and boomers yet. So how do we span those age differences, and how do we communicate differently to these age differences is through educational psychology principles. And then the motivation aspect of why are you doing this to inspire people is sprinkled throughout everything that we do. We are starting into phase 2 soon on August 1st, where we'll run the pilot program. We'll have 2 cohorts going through. We'll do research assessment of the product as we go forward and continue not just through research assessment, but also continued customer discovery. Again, practicing what we're preaching to both inspire, train, and now support people, as well as validate our product. In the next phase, hopefully we'll have a product that works, has gone through iterations, and is validated now and can be commercialized going forward. Our goal again is to increase SBIR output, to increase translation, whether it be licensing or whatever form, but perhaps most importantly, to increase the positive attitude of the region towards translation. And that is what we're targeting for our assessment, because that predicts future success of attitude going forward. We do have an organization that NIH requires that's actually quite effective going forward. Our external advisory committee and steering committee help guide us, and our day-to-day operations team meets through the administrative committee as shown here. The steering committee is made up of the 3 leaders of the program, along with Olga, and then a representative for each of our 5 states in the Central Idea State region, as well as Doug Wright, who from the Medical Center, who was one of the PIs in the previous Sharp Hub program, to bring forward that perspective, and also his amazing connections throughout the Idea State region. Our advisory committee is growing still. We right now have people from our region, and we're recruiting a national person to give that outside perspective from our region. Joni Cobb ran Pipeline, that program that I talked about, that is the regional entrepreneurial program. Nick Love is a co-founder of a regional, he's an MD, MBA, recent graduate, who's going forward in his own company and giving a really younger generation perspective. Jaya ran Embark in the Missouri region. So she brings in, again, a totally different perspective of how programs can run and do. The bottom 3 people are key. They're all key for going forward. These are all people involved in venture groups. So as we talk about how our program will run, these 3 people will be hearing what our participants are doing at a very early stage, and can, from their different perspective, make connections for our groups across the region as we go forward. I know you can't read this, it's very small print, but I wanted to give you an idea of how our pilot program is set up and will be running. We look at the top of the funnel approach here, and I'll zoom in on this first cohort as we go forward. We are developing in phase 2, where the money is to actually pay coders to take the storyboards. I'll show you some examples pretty soon. Take our storyboards of what our web online educational program will look like and translate that to reality. This will be done in the just-in-time process and engineering approach, where, like the name implies, you do things just in time to get them done. Our storyboards are done for several of these modules, and we're completing them by the end of phase 2. Phase 1 will have them all done, and they are being converted into the online system for the V1 of the actual product that will be tested during the pilot study, where module 1 will be done just in time for its use in the top of the funnel, etc. here. And then there'll be a V2 coming out of this that'll be revised based on assessment from the cohort, the first cohort, and then in customer discovery, and then use the V2 in the second cohort as it goes forward. Finally coming out will be a V3 that will hopefully be validated through the assessment research have peer-reviewed publications, and then be ready to commercialize. If you look closely at the cohort, we'll have recruiting across, we've been recruiting the R1 and R2 institutions across our region and getting them into what we call the top of the funnel. Anyone is welcome in the top of the funnel. Module 0 is anyone can learn from this, and I'll show you what the modules contain in a minute. We will, on the academic calendar, award proof of concept funding to go forward where it's required that the participants in the proof of concept studies as teams go through the modules and meet monthly with the team to give guidance and talk about what the module is. At the end of the program, they are required to submit a draft of a phase 1 proposal that will be reviewed by BBC, et cetera, who is the company on the Sharp Hub program. They do a fantastic job of reviewing proposals for customers. And then they'll pitch, the teams will pitch to our external advisory committee. Again, the people with venture support experience. They'll end the program and get feedback a month before the September 5th deadline for SBIR submission. So hopefully they'll be able to take that feedback and guide it either for that next, the guidance going forward for September 5th, or for the next funding period, application submission date. Again, all applicants are accepted in the top of the funnel. Module 0, everyone will do, and that will have widespread effect, hopefully on the ideas we'll show you in a minute. The proposal is very small. It's 1 page for what they're actually doing. Now, I think it was, some people cite Benjamin Franklin apologizing at the end of a 4-page letter that he couldn't write a 1-page. This is the same idea, only it will have force people to focus in on what their idea is and make it very clear. Everyone's required to do a budget justification. We'll have up to $40,000 per project with an average of around 25K. And then we'll request an initial business model canvas. And module 0 explains what a business model canvas is. They will be required to then pitch 5-minute presentation to the external advisory committee. Again, get their ideas in front of venture people who could make connections for them. We will also help them make connections going forward as they get proof of concept funding or don't, and maybe learn and then resubmit for the next cycle. We'll make it proof of concept funds available in time to appoint graduate students on the academic schedule. That's really important to do that. As a professor, it's if you can't get graduate students in time, it holds up your progress on your work. And then the deliverables will be, they have to complete the monthly modules. They have to participate in a cohort to build community. And at the end of the period, again, the SBIR phase 1 draft and a pitch. Here's what the product looks like. This is a storyboard. So it's not the actual functional product yet. This is the next step that we do from the written word down to what it would look like. It helps so much to visualize what you're doing before it goes on to coders. Our product name is Inspire You To ITI, where ITI is Innovation, Translation, and Impact. The light bulb idea, obvious source here. This is what people will look at when they go to the website, where there's a dashboard on the left-hand side that shows throughout the entire time. They'll see their progress. They'll see colors. They'll see tips of the day for inspiration. Again, visually appealing, following educational psychology aspects for adult learners. Here's the module landing page. So if you click on modules here, the modules will show up and you'll see your progress on them and your calendar deadline and feedback on every page. The landing page for module 0, this will be a pull down where it'll show you what the lessons are about, and then the lessons can be initiated through here. You'll see your progress as well as you go through and the learning requirements. The outline for the modules has been really useful for customer discovery of what do we really need to teach? These are just titles. But Module 0 remembers what everyone will see. It's focusing on experimental design and of both the product and the business. So it's teaching about how to build a culture of innovation in your research lab, how to look at failure as compost for success, how to build a team, about conflict of interest that can be difficult to navigate, about customer discovery and using the business model canvas, and then finally, how to design an initial go, no-go experiment that could be, although it's not required, preliminary data that will help strengthen your SBIR phase 1 proposal. Preliminary data specifically on your product concept versus your research area. The rest of the modules are all topics that we believe and have learned from customer discovery that are important for academics to think about as you translate and then form companies with connections to the commercialization world. Each one of these lessons is about 5 to 20 minutes. They're really short. They're not trying to take academics and make them MBAs. They give academics what you need to learn about each of these subject matters going forward. Each one will have written word, interactive content that follows adult educational psychology principles. And each lesson will include supplemental resources that allow you to go to targeted resources to do a deep dive on each one of these subjects. Okay. Here's just an example of a Module 0, Lesson 5 with the storyboarding, where on the real screen, these letters won't be here, but it's a way to communicate to the coders of what we want and visualize what we'll have in each lesson. The details are then mapped out from these various sections that are code for the coder of what needs to be put in there. Here's various storyboard examples. This would be the middle part that people can scroll down through as they learn. Again, these are meant to be 5 to 20 minutes, including the various interactive components. This particular one has a drop-down click. Now, this one has a drop-down click on the flip cards, rather. So if you click on this green one and the idea in your market, it then will cycle through flip cards that you'll learn and have interaction with the program. So you're not just reading screens, you're interacting with it and building your retention more. Here's another example of drop-down clicks, where on this particular one, I apologize, you can't read anything here, it's so small, but if you were to click on this arrow, you would find that each one of them will build out so that you're interacting with it as you go forward. Learning as you interact. Here's another example of an embedded video, where this will eventually be, when it's beyond the storyboard, a video that you click and interact and engage through that video. There'll be other visuals that show important concepts going forward to help increase retention and understanding of that information. There'll be maybe cartoons in some of these. Here's just an example from another one of the lesson. If it's articles that you're prompted to read or other outside interactions that are accessible. But whatever the product is, it's a way to interact and engage to increase retention and keeping it short between 5 and 20 minutes. We'll also have assessment every step along the way. Here's just one example of Module 0's assessment questionnaire with basic questions that can be compared for each module. There'll be a page rating, a feedback, and then we will do pre and post surveys between various sections that will allow us to understand if entrepreneurial intent has been impacted by the modules going forward. Again, this is our pilot study program. Module 2 or cohort 2 will do a different version. It'll be informed by assessment and customer discovery. We'll go forward to the third version that will then be commercialized. I found that we have a lot of excitement in our region for how this could be used. We are using this not just in the pilot study program, but I am, for example, using it in a class that I've taught for the last 15 years. It's part of the basis for this learning. The class is biomedical product development. I'm using a hybrid situation now where Inspire U2 ITI will be used online for a flipped classroom. And I'll use my classroom time not to lecture as much, but to interact and have experiential learning when students learn from Inspire U2 ITI separately. So our pilot study participants, again, they get a preliminary data. Even though it's not required, it is very helpful to go forward for a phase 1 grant or fast track. They'll get online education on their time frame, which we learn from customer discovery is really important. They also, through customer discovery, we learned that people want to be able to learn, experience, and then go back and learn at a deeper level. So each lesson will have supplemental information, will be accessible beyond the time of the pilot study. So participants can learn continuously and more deeply as they need it. We'll get that pre-review of the phase 1 proposal. And perhaps most importantly of all, we're building a community of innovators across on LinkedIn. So beyond just the pilot study, people can work together and support each other and inspire each other through failures to successes. And then we're connecting them through both the external advisory committee and each of our constituent partners with potential CEOs. That's a problem here. There aren't as many CEOs in our region, and especially ones with experience. So that'll be critical as we go forward to both inspire, train, and support us all. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you for the outstanding job of transforming or translating the NOFA into a great program and really showing us and everybody how education products for entrepreneurship development, at least how it should be. So we do have a question, the first question from Eddie, whom you're going to meet later. So is this limited to, I suppose, is the teaching material is limited to SBIR application or both SBIR and STTR?
That's a great question. We are teaching about both. I always incorporate SBIR and STTR whenever I'm talking. But no, we do have a section. What is the difference between SBIR and STTR in one of the modules? Good question.
Next one is from your fellow PI from our Southeast region. This is Jackie. Who is creating the content?
Right. So it's a collaboration between me and employees at CET, Continuum Educational Technologies. And then we're getting feedback on this from the External Advisory Committee and the Steering Committee going forward.
Okay. Next one is also from your fellow colleague from Delaware, Dr. Julius Corley. How closely do you work with the regional TTOs and in what capacities?
Another really good question. So we have done customer discovery with the TTOs of what should be incorporated in the educational product for now. Okay, so really, really important to get their input and feedback. What we found is that they, rightfully so, they really want us to make sure that academic entrepreneurs understand that they're friends, as in they're there to help you, not to hinder you going forward. We've heard from entrepreneurs that they think TTOs are a hindrance. So we're trying to bridge that gap and reduce those barriers, both for people that are in existing companies within academic entrepreneurs to inform their partners in outside companies about why tech transfer offices work the way they do, as well as help academic entrepreneurs work better with their tech transfer offices in a variety of ways. As we go forward in our pilot study, we're reaching out to tech transfer offices in the various R1 and R2 institutions. They'll be one of our primary contacts as we go forward.
Thank you. Next question is from Bob Saunders. He is also a PI from the Southeast IRED Award. What about training to secure venture capital?
Right. That's in one of the modules. It's in the last module, I believe. And again, we're not trying to make academic entrepreneurs the people who would necessarily go out and secure that venture capital fund. We're working to have academic entrepreneurs understand how to work and how to communicate with their business partners on this side. Okay, so I would love feedback. We're getting feedback on those sections of what's most important. But that's part of what we're doing is learning and revising our product as we go forward.
Okay, good. Next one is from Matt McMahon. He is the director of NIH-wide seed office, works on the small business space. His question is, curious to hear how you think about the customers for the product. Innovator as the primary customer or innovator plus the TTO?
That is a fantastic question. So in our customer discovery, again, practicing what we're preaching, we have been looking at both. We've been looking at customers, primary customers as faculty, staff, and students, because that is our first target audience. But TTOs are the next customer. Also to increase the connection between TTOs. Outside entrepreneurs are customer type as well. They may not be going through our program, but if they do go through a module with their partners, it may be a way of looking through the eyes of academic entrepreneurs in a different way than they have before. I would like to say the seed program is amazing. My startup company has benefited tremendously from that. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Lisa. So I have a question going back to what you mentioned in the early part of your career as a faculty member. You did not necessarily receive a lot of encouragement to pursue your passion in entrepreneurship, right? I just wonder if you can share some specific thoughts or measures you took at the time. How did you navigate through that hurdle? Apparently, you will believe in proof. Whatever you did must have a great value because you're a success.
That's a little bit of a tough question because it does depend on the culture that you're in at the time. So I think, again, ignoring the naysayers or people that don't understand that translation is science and it's just a different form than basic science is really important. And to balance, you have to navigate the academic world. You need to publish. Again, thinking of papers as products too really helped me at the time. And then seeking support of others. And that is what we're building here, is helping people navigate that world and to really follow their passion and help people through what they're doing in a way that's more tangible. Papers are helping people too, but the translational world is a much more tangible way of having that more direct effect.
I just follow up a little bit on my head, like with that kind of, I would say disencouragement, like did you pursue like a conversation with your department chair or seeking guidance, something like that?
Another good question. So at the time, my department chair he didn't know what to do with me, but he was very supportive, right? He didn't discourage me actively like my mentor had at the time. So that was really a blessing for me, that he, while he didn't know what to do with how I was acting differently than some, he didn't discourage me in any way and was supportive. That is a key of going forward. to just give equal weight to people that do translation as those who do basic science. Not give special recognition or undermined in any way, but just all of it is good, and having that approach going forward. And that made all the difference for me at the time.
Next one, Julius has another question. Have you found P&T guidelines that don't give credit for entrepreneur activities to be a hindrance?
Absolutely. Now that is something that our institution is trying to change and working actively to change, where publications and money of traditional type of money are what are considered the most important currently. And back when I went through the entrepreneurial work, wasn't considered to be anything but perhaps service. There are now programs for community engagement, including entrepreneurship, to count towards tenure. There's ways of other types of funding to be recognized more than there were before. So I think we're making great progress, but there still needs to be a lot of work done on that. Tricia Bergman is, as part of Startup Central, is leading the charge on that in working to make P&T guidelines more friendly, even more friendly for entrepreneurial behaviors. That's a good step.
For everybody's benefit, P&T is a promotion and tenure. Some places referred as a rank and tenure. They're similar things. Next one, again, is from your fellow colleague. This one is from New Mexico. John Chavez. Will the institution have a choice of which educational products to pilot?
That's a fantastic question. I should have addressed that in my talk. My apologies. We've specifically designed this educational product to be modular. So the order that I showed them in doesn't have to be the order that can be licensed, and each module can be licensed separately as the customer chooses and can be white labeled for different purposes. So that means that an institution in Missouri, let's just pick a state close to us, Institution Missouri can license whatever modules they want, put their name on it, tailor specific modules, for example, the tech transfer office lessons that go with that. They can put their information on there through the company and just license out so it looks like part of it from there. Part of the customer discovery, what's informed is that one of the big things with specifically students now are badges, are micro-credentials going forward. So the modules are designed so that institutions can take them, white label them, and perhaps give badges that can be put on LinkedIn. Companies apparently really like this. So they look at badges, especially from students, as a differentiator potentially for hiring. So again, everything's modular, can be adapted at some level. Not everything can be adapted or changed, but certain aspects will be adaptable and changeable for various institutions. Good questions.
Thank you. Matt followed up providing a link or information about NSF guideline on how to credit entrepreneur activities, innovation in the rank and tenure process. That should be useful for everybody. Yeah. I saw my colleague Dorsey Beckett had a question earlier, but do you still have it? Oh, here we go. I would like to know your thoughts on strategies to encourage tech developers in academia who may not have previously considered entrepreneurship to do so.
That is a fantastic question about, I think, providing that inspiration. There will be some people who will never want to translate, and that's okay. They can do what they want to do. But I think, especially at least in our central region, when you start hearing about others translating and have examples to follow, it makes it a little bit easier. And it includes that spark of inspiration for you to perhaps take your ideas and take it forward. That is actually what we're hoping to do through Module 0 and the top of the funnel in our pilot study, to take a larger swath of people than who we could actually take through the pilot study, but include them in module 0 to think differently about their research, to think differently about what their goals might be through their research. So advertising will be key, reaching out to institutions, marketing of putting forward this opportunity in a positive sense. But I would welcome any ideas people have for that, and love to share and learn from others as well.
We still have some minute, but let me ask another question, just in case people have more questions to follow up. So you sort of started your academic career in turn of the century, about 20 years ago, as a starting faculty member with a passion in entrepreneurship. In terms of the subject we just discussed, the institutional culture in valuing or encouraging faculty member pursuing their interest, how much change have you by your observation has occurred?
A tremendous amount of change here, although there's a long way to go. I think part of what was instrumental in making that change was recognizing how you could recruit really high quality graduate students by putting forward the products track is what we call it. It's actually the same courses, the same pathway in a graduate program as any other track, but now directed towards innovation and entrepreneurship. When they saw students flocking to the program because of that I think helped flip faculty minds about what that meant to go forward. That and a few others were hired in the School of Engineering who were quite active in entrepreneurship at the time, has really made a big difference here on that front. We still do have a long ways to go, but that's what we're working towards is making that change. P&T is a big next step that has been improved, but still doesn't count in all the entrepreneurial activities like I think it should. But KU specifically is making steps to change that as part of a group that is looking at that change and working to move it through Faculty Senate.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I don't see additional questions, so I'd like to thank you again and give us this great, very thoughtful talk. Thank you.